Hi, I'm FIDE Master Livy Cherbulenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis of a chess.com game played between 1644 versus 1621. Let's start. Right, so e4, c6, basically black wants to play the Caro-Kann defense. Bishop c4, yeah, not the most common, usually we go like d4, acquiring the center, but let's see, bishop c4, d5, attacking the bishop, takes, bishop b3. Yeah, see, this is not so great, because the bishop is stuck against the d5 pawn. Eventually black will play e6, and so the bishop is stuck against this pawn barrier, and so eventually white will have to play like d4, and then pawn c3, and redirect the bishop to c2, and to put it on this great diagonal. But the thing is, if you want to do that, if you want to put it on this diagonal, why waste time with bishop c4? If you want to do that, you could just literally play d4, d5, takes, they take, and then eventually put your bishop on d3, even like right now if you want, right? And if knight c6, just go like c3, see? And you put your bishop in just one move on d3 versus like this convoluted way here, like c4, b3, you know, c2, wasting a lot of time, okay? So if you want to put it on d3, just like play d4, take, and play bishop d3. No need to play bishop c4, it's wasting way too much time. Okay, let's see, a5, so black goes straight for the bishop, alright. Not so sure about this, because this weakens the b5 square. I think this is a mistake. Now white could just play like c3, stopping a4, right, connecting the queen, and then black cannot play a4, but the weakness on b5 remains. You know, plus white can always play like pawn a4 and fix the b5 weakness. And the difference is that black cannot defend the b5 square with a pawn, whereas white can always play c3 and guard the b4 square. So for example, white could play a4 and then eventually play knight a3, knight b5, have a defended knight on b5, whereas black one plays knight c6, we just go pawn to c3, and so the knight cannot go through b4. So a5 is a mistake. Just common sense, just develop the kingside knight. The kingside knight, then the kingside bishop somewhere here, right? Then close the chain with e6, develop this bishop somewhere, you know, castle, develop the queenside knight, and you're fine. Always develop the kingside knight, kingside knight first, then maybe the queenside bishop, put it outside the chain, then close the chain with e6, develop the kingside bishop, castle, you know, the queenside knight, and you're fine. So a5, I think, is just a mistake, I think. a4 white played, yeah, which is also fine. a4 or c3 could have played, but okay. Knight to c6, okay. Knight f3, white develops, makes sense. Okay, e5. Yeah, so I mean, if white wanted to prevent this, maybe even more precise would have been d4 to prevent e5. Now e5 we just take, right? Knight takes, and then we just take on d5. Maybe this would have been more precise, right? Let's say knight f6, and then we can play like knight f3, and then like pawn c3, castle, the rook will come to e1, this bishop will come to f4 perhaps, and the b knight will come to d2, or to a3, and then to b5, right? In combination with bishop on f4, there's ideas like knight c7. So usually, yeah, the rule of thumb, if you can have at least one pawn in the center, first move that pawn in the center, and then you can develop like the knight. Okay, so yeah, I think pawn d4 would have been a bit more precise. But okay, e5, okay, castles, yeah, still white has much better development. Like there's also a downside to this e5 move for black, because the king is still in the center, and so there's ideas like rook e1, d4, so black might lose the pawn. So another rule of thumb is, usually it's not ideal to push in the center, to push your pawns in the center, to overexpand with your king still in the center. It's like too risky, it can backfire. If your king is castled, it's usually okay, but if it's in the center, it can just get lost. So don't rush pushing your pawns too aggressively before you have castled. Okay, let's see, bishop g4, pinning the knight, well, that makes sense actually. Okay. H3, attacking the bishop, alright. Bishop h5, keeping the pin. Rook to e1. So now basically the threat is g4, bishop moves, and then knight takes e5. Okay, makes sense. Bishop d6. Wait, doesn't this block the queen? Wait, what? What about bishop takes d5 simply? Yeah, bishop d6 is a mistake. Simply bishop takes d5. Winning the key central pawn. And basically with huge advantage. It's bishop d5. So, yeah, but how do you defend this pawn? I mean, e4 doesn't work because of like d3, correct? Not easy to defend. Maybe f6, but that weakens, you know, this diagonal, right? The light diagonals, this diagonal, a bunch of stuff it weakens. f6. The knight cannot come to f6. Maybe white could still play like d4, although then e4. I mean, the pawn is spin. Maybe like knight c3, pressuring the d5 pawn. But then there's knight e7. Plus also unpinning from our rook. Now ef is a threat. It's getting complicated. There's also knight c3, immediately putting pressure on the pawn. I think white still has, or there's also by the way d3, you know, and then knight c3, completely preventing e4, and then knight c3, pressuring this pawn. There's also such an idea. I think white still has like initiative, because you have like a very powerful bishop, pressure on d5, pressure on e5, better development, you know, his king is in the center, his bishop, his king, his knight not yet developed. So I think white has advantage, but not like completely winning at least, right? So bishop d6 I think is a big mistake. Simply bishop takes d5. Okay, let's see. Yeah, pawn d3, that's a huge miss. Okay, knight f6. Yeah, knight f6, I mean, that allows, knight f6 allows bishop g5, which is very good for white, pinning the knight and putting pressure on d5. I think maybe black should have played knight g7, so that after bishop g5 they could play f6. It's still not ideal for black, because it weakens this diagonal, still not ideal. But I think it's better than knight f6. And let's say the bishop moves somewhere, let's say here, and basically the idea is that when white goes knight c3, putting pressure on the pawn, black has this bishop f7 idea, at the very least. Right? Bishop f7 and guarding the pawn at the very least. Or just moving this bishop away somewhere like here, or I don't know, and defending with the queen. So I think this would have been better for black. I mean, better than knight f6, a better alternative. Okay, yeah, knight f6, I think this is an inaccuracy. Yeah, knight bd2, yeah, that's I think a huge miss. Why not bishop g5? Why black the bishop on c1? Doesn't make any sense. Why not bishop g5? Activate the bishop, pin the knight, right, which guards d5, and put pressure on d5. And then if they take with the queen, when we take on f6, we're just gonna lose a pawn. And if they take with a pawn, we're gonna destroy their kingside pawn structure, right? Let's say, how do we play? I don't know, bishop c7 or something. I mean, knight c3, for example, I don't know, right? Or even take if we want. Now, if we take with a queen, we just take here, take the pawn. And if we take with a pawn, now we have a destroyed pawn structure, and now we can go like knight c3, let's say d4, and now we have a bunch of ideas. We could put the knight here, or here, or here, let's say knight d5, pressure here, oops, pressure here, weak light squares, very powerful bishop, weak king, weak f5 square. This looks pretty good for white. Plus, because the king is in the center, there is this idea of c3, pawn break in the center, right? We want to open stuff up. Because the king is in the center, we need dynamic play. And because piece play is not enough. Piece play is not enough. We need to make some pawn break. We need to open stuff up. For that, we just go c3. And if they don't take, we take. And if they take, we take back the pawn and then play d4. Game over, basically. Or we can play knight c3 first, you know. And then like d4, then like knight d5, for example, you know. But I think bishop g5 is the best move for white here. I think it was a must. So knight b2, huge miss, huge miss. Okay, black castles, c3, okay, makes sense. Why not like play maybe bishop c2, control this square, makes sense. Okay, d4, yeah, d4 I think is a mistake. Because now it weakens the, one, it puts another pawn of the color of his bishop, two, it weakens the light squares, three, it opens up this bishop. So I think d5 is a major mistake. Major mistake. Black could have just played like a move like, I don't know, rook 8 or something, you know. And then if white goes knight f1 with idea bishop g5, just go h6. Just go h6. So yeah, or there's actually also e4 maybe even actually, right? Because the knight's pinned. So yeah, maybe white would have to like move a queen somewhere. But if we move a queen here, then we cannot move a bishop to c2. So do you see the point? It's like much better to have a pawn here because you have much more dynamics. You have dynamics. When you play d4, you lose the dynamics. You lose the control of the light square. So d4 is a big strategical mistake. All right, queen c2 doesn't make any sense. Why would you put a queen on c2? Doesn't do anything. Like we should play like rook c8 and like knight b4. Like completely useless. Black just weakened the light squares. So why not use that and move the knight to c4? Great outpost, secured by the a4 pawn. Black cannot play b5, pressuring the bishop, pressuring the e5 pawn. This looks very good. You know, this looks very good. Bishop c7, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe like bishop g5. Pinning the knight, and if h6, just bishop h4. Keeping the pressure is like so annoying for black. Right, and if we go like g5, I mean, it just weakens the king, because it moved from the king. We could just play like bishop g3, let's say, pressuring with further pressure on the e5 pawn. And now the king's weak, there's ideas like h4 potentially, you know. This looks very good for white. But just the knight on c4 is so great. It just makes so much sense. So yeah, I think this would have been, of course, the best for white, knight c4. Or if knight c4, at the very least, if knight c4, go knight f1. And then knight g3. And then the knight on g3 is also very good, attacking the bishop, escaping from the pin. Also, the knight controls e4. Also, the knight can potentially go to, you know, to, let's say we make some random move. Let's play rook e8, knight g3. And if bishop g6, we could play like knight h4. One, we could just take the bishop and then have a power of 2 bishops. Or 2, we could put the knight on f5, which is one of the best squares in these kind of positions. Right? Knight on f5, attacking here, here, here. The knight attacks a bunch of stuff. The queen can come to f3. The bishop can come to g5. With huge pressure on f6, on g7, everything around black's king. So either g3 on the king side or c4. But not queen c2. Doesn't make any sense. That's a big mistake. Okay, let's see. Yeah, rook c8, of course. Like I said. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, knight c4. Okay, that's a good move. But we don't need the queen on c2. He could have played knight c4 without the queen on c2. Plus now, black can just like take on f3, destroy our pawn structure. So yeah, I mean, not good. Not good. Okay, gf. Now white king is weak. Okay. h6 preventing, I mean, yeah, preventing bishop g5, yeah. Or could have just moved the bishop to c7, but okay. Okay, king g2. Yeah, what's the point? Usually in these kind of positions, you wanna bring the rook to g1. That's at least like 1 plus you have the g file, and pressure g7 and h6. So now the problem with king h1 is queen d7, right? Attacking this one, and king h2 we cannot go due to e4 check. So that's the problem. Ideally, we want to put the king on h1 and then rook g1, pressuring g7, h6. But how can we do that? Oh, wait, maybe we can. Actually, we can. King h1, queen d7. Now we just take. I mean, queen h4, just go king g1, right? Deflecting the queen, and now we go rook g1. And now if queen d7, I think we have, well, at the very least, we could just play king h2, because now there's no more bishop on d6, right? So it works. Or simply like rook g3 also should be fine, I guess, right? Because knight h5, we have this, knight f6. And maybe, yeah, maybe just like king h2. Although he has like queen d6, not so clear, yeah. But basically the point, somehow we need to find a way to put the rook on g1. Anyway, yeah, king g2 definitely is not good. Maybe like bring the queen, because the queen is so far away from the king side. So maybe bring the queen to like e2, and then it can go to like f1 g2, and then king h1, rook g1, right? So maybe like this, and you know, let's say we go like this, and then king h1, let's say queen d7, then we have queen f1. Do you see? Then we make whatever move, let's say rook here, and then queen g2, rook g1. This, I think, makes a lot of sense. We need to bring the queen to the g file. Plus it guards h3. So I think, yeah, I think this was the best. Queen e2. Queen e2 and then like this. Yeah. Yeah, king g2 definitely a big mistake. Knight h5. Makes sense. Rook g... yeah, now we put the rook on g1. Okay. Knight f4. That's of course a big mistake. Usually you do not want to have a pawn on f4. F4 square is so great for black, but you don't want to end up with a pawn. You want to end up with a piece, ideally with a knight on f4, like ideally if you could have like a knight on g6, say, and then play knight f4, he takes to the bishop, and then you take with the other knight, and ultimately you have a knight on f4. That's great. But the pawn on f4 is completely useless. That's actually bad for black. Because if black has a pawn on f4, then they can no longer have a piece on f4. And the whole point is to have a piece, even like a queen, or even like a bishop, or eventually in the queen's in the endgame a rook, or especially a knight. That's the whole point. It puts pressure, lots of pressure. But the pawn is completely useless, and black's that square. So that's a big mistake. Again, I think black could just play like bishop c7 or something, and then maybe like queen f6, knight f4, right? You know, or knight e7, ideally. Knight g6 and then knight f4. There's also, by the way, after knight e7, knight g6, there's also ideas like knight h4, attacking the king, king moves and then take on f3. Combine that with the queen on d7. When the king moves, black can play queen takes h3. As you can see, again, white needs the queen on closer to the king side to defend the king, to defend the h3 pawn. So knight f4 is a huge strategical mistake. Huge strategical mistake. Okay. King f1. Wow, that's crazy. That is insane. Why not put the king on h2? Guarding the pawn. The king is safe, opening up the rook. We can double up. Or we can triple up. We could put the rook on g4, another rook on g1, bring the queen, the f1 to g2. Right? All the while guarding the h3 pawn. Why go crazy? Why go to f1? Not only is now the king less safe, closer to the center. 1. 2. Leaving the h3 pawn undefended. 3. Disconnecting the rooks. Is even bad for our attack? Is disconnecting the rooks? So it's so bad, so bad. King h2 was the correct move. But let's see. Takes. What? Why not take with a pawn and control the key squares and maybe eventually play d4 and then bring the bishop to b1 and attack h7? Right? But especially controlling the squares, the access squares like b4 and d4. Queen c3, I mean, I see the point. Actually, wait, maybe, because I thought it like weakens the dark squares. It's like strategically so bad, but maybe actually it works. Wait a bit, I can change my mind. I have a right to change my mind, because there's actually this pressure on g7. I underestimated. I mean, because g6. Wait a bit. I mean, unless g6, if g6 works for black, this is bad for white. If g6 works for black, then white just has very weak dark squares, and this is horrible. But if g6 does not work, then of course this is very good for white. G6. Now let's see. If we just take, he takes, he is fine. And now this is what I was saying, right? Then just like knight d4, knight e5, knight b4, white just has weak dark squares. This is actually, I think, very good for black. Now the only question is, and the thing is we don't have rook g6, right? Because the queen guards g6. The only question is if we have something more. For example, knight b6, and then if queen b6, rook takes g6, the pawn is pinned because of a bishop. He moves and queen g7 checkmate. That'd be great. Now the problem is bishop to e5, attacking our queen. Now we cannot take rook because we take the queen, right? And I mean, rook g6 check, just king h7. And now the queen's hanging, the knight's hanging, the rook's hanging, and there's no checkmate. And if we just move a queen somewhere, let's say here, well, we can just like take the knight, rook g6, and just king h7. There's no checkmate. We're just completely lost. So knight b6 does not work. What about rook g6 takes first? Takes. Now, if knight d6 check, I mean, we have like king h7. Of course, we could like take here, we take, and what do we have? His king maybe a bit weak, but so is our king. Queen h3 is a threat, actually. Yeah, our king is also pretty weak, actually. I would say maybe our king is even weaker, in fact. Because like, if you go like this, there's even ideas like this, you know. Yeah. So this is actually fine for black, I think. But I have an idea. What if we go knight e5 check? Ah, no, actually it doesn't work. For some reason, I thought our queen was on d3. I was thinking like queen g6. But no, it just goes like here. Yeah, no, actually when queen c3 does not work. See, ultimately it does not work, because g6 takes here. White king is pretty weak. I think white king is weaker. White king is weaker, I think. So yeah, so when I think I was right, when white should have taken like this. Okay, let's see. Queen c3. Wait, what? Yeah, this is insane. Yeah, should have played g6, of course. This is crazy. This is crazy. Yeah, queen g7 checkmate. Yeah, this is insane. Yeah, no, like I said, black should have played g6, and then it would have been much more interesting. Alright, I hope you enjoyed. If so, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.